Hello and welcome to our brand new episode of the Daily Debate. My name is Ahmed Nader and tonight we're going to focus on the Egyptian diplomatic efforts to be supporting the Palestinian cause and of course to be de-escalating the situation in the Gaza Strip. To be specific, as the main top stories for today will be focusing on such an important topic, and we will be starting with the first piece of news that took place on Sunday as the Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry asserted the necessity to stop the Israeli aggression against the civilians in Gaza and ensure the access of the aid into the Strip. This came during Shoukry's meeting with the UN Special Rapporteur on the human rights in the occupied Palestinian territories at the headquarters of the Foreign Ministry in the new administrative capital. Shoukry asserted the need to stop the violence and the attacks of the Israeli settlers in the West Bank. And Egypt continued the efforts in coordination with the international and the regional partners to rush more aid into the Gaza Strip upon directives of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. 8 aid trucks entered the besieged enclave through the Rafah border crossing, while 250 trucks entered Gaza through the Karm Abu Salim crossing. In addition, 4 fuel trucks and 4 gas trucks also reached the Gaza Strip from Rafah. 31 wounded Palestinians and 49 companions were also evacuated to the Egyptian hospitals for treatment. However, we will be focusing on today's episode on the diplomatic efforts by the political leadership under the tenure of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to be supporting the Palestinian cause and to be supporting the Palestinian brothers and sisters in the Gaza Strip. We will be heading to the first report of the Daily Debate for tonight, which focuses on the presidential activities of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi over the past week. Stay tuned.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi receives Director of Foreign Intelligence Service of the Russian Federation, Sergei Naryshkin, and his accompanying delegation. The meeting focused on the regional situation. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi received a phone call from the President of Serbia, Aleksandar Vučić. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi received the King of the Kingdom of Bahrain, His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa, in a visit to Egypt, emphasizing strong ties between the two countries. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi held a joint press conference with His Majesty the King of Bahrain, Hamad bin Isa. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi saw off the King of Bahrain, His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa, at Cairo International Airport, concluding his visit to Egypt.
Welcome back. You're still watching the Daily Debate. That was a report about the presidential activities of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi over the past week. We will be heading to the main topic of the episode for tonight, as Egypt is confirming and reiterating a firm commitment to the Palestinian cause once again under the political leadership of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, and we'll be having more details regarding such a commitment in the upcoming report. Stay tuned.
Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry stressed the urgent need to put an end to humanitarian catastrophe facing Palestinians in Gaza, halt Israeli violations, and end collective punishment practices against Palestinians, including indiscriminate targeting, siege, hunger, and complete destruction of infrastructure. Shoukry highlighted Egypt's position upon his reception to delegation from Fatah movement headed by Deputy Chairman Mahmoud Alul. The meeting discussed the humanitarian and security situation in the occupied Palestinian territories, including Gaza Strip, the West Bank and East Jerusalem. The talks also addressed the necessary measures to halt Israeli aggression against Gaza, as well as the escalation of Israeli violations and settler violence against Palestinians and their properties in the West Bank, in violation of international law and humanitarian law. Foreign Minister Shukri underscored the importance of the immediate implementation of UN Security Council Resolution 2728 and built upon it to achieve a permanent ceasefire. The Egyptian top diplomat highlighted legal and humanitarian responsibility of the international community to ensure full and sustainable delivery of aid to Gaza, warning against the humanitarian risks posed by deliberate attempts to target the work of UNRWA. He emphasized the importance of refraining from politicizing the agency's work, responding and enabling it to areas of the Strip. He listened to a detailed Palestinian delegation about the deteriorating humanitarian and security situation in Jerusalem, the unprecedented Israeli restrictions and assaults against Palestinians in Jerusalem, and worshippers at Al-Aqsa Mosque, indicating that there is potential escalation of the situation beyond the control in all occupied Palestinian territories. Gratitude for the Palestinian leadership and people for Egypt's honorable stance in supporting the Palestinian cause, resolving the Gaza crisis and working towards a complete ceasefire and delivery of humanitarian aid to Palestinians. Minister Shukri reiterated steadfast commitment to Palestinian cause, providing all necessary support to Palestinian brothers and their legitimate rights, condemning the continued expansion of illegal Israeli settlements. Egypt also rejects all attempts and plans to displace Palestinians from their lands, to liquidate the Palestinian cause and undermine the foundations of future peace and peaceful coexistence in the region. He also emphasized Egypt's continued efforts to intensify contacts with external parties to underline the importance of resolving this crisis at its roots, ending the long-term isolation of Palestinian territories through a two-state solution based on internationally recognized legitimacy. He stressed the need for international action towards recognizing the Palestinian and granting leadership within the nations.
He's during the daily debate, and I'm honored to be having with me over the program for tonight is Ambassador Medhat Miligy, the former Assistant Foreign Minister and Egypt's former Consul to Israel. Thank you very much for being with us tonight on the daily debate. Anytime. Of course, we have seen the support by the political leadership, the diplomatic support given by the political leadership here in Egypt under the tenure and under the guidance of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi over the past years, but more specifically ever since the beginning of the attacks of Israel against the Gaza Strip on October the 7th. How did you see the support given by Egypt to the Palestinian brothers and sisters, and of course on the political level from the Egyptian president to the Palestinian president Mahmoud Abbas?
Well, of course, ever since this crisis erupted and President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi did not spare any efforts to help our brothers and sisters in Gaza Strip and in Palestine in general. The idea is that we have red lines, and these red lines have to be respected. And they are mainly two essential red lines. The first one is not to permit the liquidation of the Palestinian issue by forcibly deporting the Palestinian from there, either internally or externally. As we see right now, most of the Palestinians who are in the Rafah enclave are immigrants from northern and central Gaza. So this is one line that shouldn't be crossed anymore. And the second thing, of course, is the idea that any Israeli and Palestinian life should be spared. But in order to do so, we have to reinstore once again the peace process, which is something that we have forgot in the dilemma of the attack that happened the 7th of October as a result of a long history of humiliation and desperation of the Palestinian people. And now, of course, the over 33,000 Palestinian dead, mainly women and children, plus, of course, the official workers of the international organization, especially the United Nations and UNRWA,
Yes.
who are there. We have over 150 who has been killed. And this actually is a certain point that we have to stop this circle of violence and listen to the sound of reason that Egypt and other countries, of course, are projecting in order to stabilize the situation and deter Israel from continuing its terrorist attack that wants to wage on Rafah enclave.
Yes, of course, Mr. Ambassador, we have seen the efforts of Egypt ever since the beginning of the assaults of Israel against the Palestinian Gaza Strip. But how do you see the importance of reaching a truce nowadays?
Well, it has always been important because the truce will permit the exchange of prisoners, which is something that has been very important on the table since this is the main target of the Israelis, as they proclaimed from the beginning that we have two main targets from this war.
Yes.
The first one is to free all the Israeli hostages, and the second one is to the full destruction of Hamas, and perhaps as well, if even they did not mention this, or any kind of Palestinian resistant movements. And this has been the reasons why this high number of casualties from the Israeli side, because they do not mind, unfortunately, this is what we've seen, in order to kill one Hamas militant, to kill along 200 or 300 Palestinians. That's how we reached 33,000 dead,
Yes.
mainly children and women. And the idea is that since Israel is enjoying the international support, and I'm not talking about what the West in general and the United States specifically are saying. I am more into their actions. Their actions is that they are supporting Israel, and they are supporting Israel unconditionally. Lately, we've seen one of our last hopes is to declare a Palestinian state. And unfortunately, only due to the United States, this resolution at the Security Council did not go through. It was expected, but again, the most important thing is to start to realize the exact position of every member of this problem that we are facing right now. We have on one side Israel that's supported unconditionally by the United States and permitting it to continue its genocide that is waging on the, and from the other, we can call the rest of the world. The United States, unfortunately, is taking a position, isolating itself more and more from the international community. And of course, if we want to continue, we have to speak about the double standard. I mean, on one side, they're supporting the oppressed people of Ukraine, but when it comes to the Palestinian cause, they are supporting the aggressor, which shows a double standard that has always been a characteristic of the American foreign policy. When it comes to Israel, nothing can deter the United States from continuing encouraging Israel to commit more and more of its war crimes, even though that what they are claiming is to, I mean, with the United States speaking about the two-state solution, but at the end of the day, they are not permitting the second state to be declared. Accordingly, we are still in a phase of until we see what Israel would accept, because only what Israel would accept would be supported by the United States. And this is unfortunately the situation where we are right now.
So what is the missing factor to be reaching a ceasefire or a truce?
Well, political will of the Israelis and of course the Americans who are supporting it. I mean, the people who are following the foreign policy of the United States, they have to understand that it all comes down to interest and interest groups who are in the United States, and those groups are the ones deciding the foreign policy of the United States. On one side, we have the lobbies or the pressure groups in the United States, such as the Jewish lobby or even the arms lobby and so on. These lobbies are controlling the major player of the American administration, simply because they are the one assuring their election or their re-election in some kinds. And that's why President Biden cannot, now that we are approaching the election,
in November.
Exactly, very soon in November, he cannot risk losing the Jewish lobby votes. And that's why he cannot actually stop Israel from continuing its war crimes. And even the candidates who are trying to beat him at the election, they're actually not less supportive of Israel. And that's why we see a situation where it's somewhat absurd to our vision in the rest of the world, where the major interest of any politician in any place where he is serving his country is the main interest of his own country. But in the United States it's different. The lobbies are the one who are deciding what are our priorities now. And that's why we see some decisions from the American administration that actually are against the American will and the American public opinion. Thus, they have to continue doing so in order to secure their place in their position, or even to have a renewal if there is any hope for that.
Yes, Mr. Ambassador, how did you see the whole saga over the past week that Palestine is applying for a full United Nations membership and the United Nations Security Council is failing to be recognizing a full Palestinian state through the veto of the United States?
Well, the international system failed. The world community did not fail, as when we are talking about most of the countries. We have 12 countries who have voted in favor of the Palestinian state. 2 countries abstained, which actually will not change much of the result, although they show their embarrassment in a certain way. We're talking here about the United Kingdom and Switzerland. And then we have only 1 country, and 1 country only, who objected to that decision, which was the United States, by using its right to a veto. And that's why we heard recently with South Africa a couple of days ago with the dialogue and the negotiations we had with the South African, the necessity of changing this world system, this international system that seems that it's not working as it should be. This system was created after the Second World War in order to restore peace in the world. And actually, by allowing just 1 country, and 1 country only, to use the right of veto in order to stop a self-determination right of the Palestinian people. And thus, it seems unfair, but actually this is what happened, and this is what's going to continue as long as we have the same unfair system of the United States. That's why, and I work at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs long enough to know that we worked on this file for such a long time in order to change these unfair rules about voting and so on, because 1 country alone should not have the right to decide for the rest of the world what is right and what is wrong. But unfortunately, this is what's happening right now. And accordingly, until we change the system, we have to accept that these are the judging system of the world community. Those are the ones who are supposed to keep peace, and unfortunately they have this veto thing which allow 1 or 2 countries to jump over the rest of the world community and take decisions for them.
Yes. On the other hand, how did you see the response of Egypt's permanent representative at the United Nations, Ambassador Osama Abdul Khaliq, saying that Palestine needs a full state, a legitimate state for the rights of their people, and we need to be having an arms embargo over the weapons going to Israel as well? How did you see the response of the Egyptian permanent representative to the UN?
Well, actually, Ambassador Osama, and I happen to know him very well, I mean, he, of course, he's not talking on his own behalf, but he's talking on behalf of Egypt, and this is the Egyptian position. The Egyptian position is that the Palestinians have the right to their own state, and that there should be an arm embargo, not just because it's Israel, but simply because this country has been violating international law on so many levels. I mean, just recently, we've seen Israel violating 2 laws of the international law, which are attacking a sovereign country, and the second thing, attacking a diplomatic mission. And that's what they did when they attacked the Iranian diplomatic mission in Damascus. And although this was a clear violation to international law, but there was no objection from the rest of the world who can actually take any concrete measures against Israel, such as the United States and the Western countries in general. On the contrary, the minute that Iran responded. And although this did not leave any casualties or any dead people behind, but they added to the sanctions over Iran, and they condemned Iran in the strongest words, and I'm quoting here of the condemnation statement that came out of several European and American countries, that they are condemning in the strongest words possible the action taken by Iran. How about the actions taken by Israel? Nothing. There is a silence, and this is again the double standard we've been talking about. Unfortunately, this is the situation. Ambassador Osama has to continue his role and trying to convince the international community that we have to put more pressure. Embargo on Israel is due to the lack of acceptance of Israel of any international commitments and any international law or humanitarian international law, and accordingly things are going in this direction, and that's why we are in this position right now.
Yes, and speaking of this position that we have nowadays, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi spoke along with, as a stance, along with the European Union, that we reject the possible military operation of Israel in the Palestinian city of Rafah, along with, of course, the European leaders and the other leaders from the entire globe as well. Do you think that this would be changing the mind of the Israeli leaders in terms of having a possible military operation in the Palestinian city of Rafah?
I think the most important thing that President Sisi is doing is to remind once again the Europeans and the Americans about the necessity of taking a stand and about removing that narrative that they have been moving within all this time. But I am sure that the Western leaders and the Western administration, especially the United States, they know exactly about the situation and how bad it is. It is not that President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is revealing a secret. They know about it, but they just lack a political will to implement concrete measures against Israel to deter it from continuing its war crimes. I mean, it's nothing but a war crime. You have over 1.5 million people, mainly from outside Rafah, who are all enclaved in this area, and they can't move anywhere except to wait for their faith to be executed by Israel. When will that happen? Nobody knows, but according to the Prime Minister of Israel, Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu, and other Israeli leaders, this is coming no matter what, because we have to free the hostages, even though they are killing the hostages during the attacks, but they have to continue doing this. And of course, this is totally related to the political situation inside Israel, because this government, according to the Israeli people in general, it has to be ousted.
We have seen protests in Tel Aviv regarding such an incident.
Exactly, but make no mistake. I mean, although you have protests against the current Israeli government, it's about its tactics, because the Israeli public just want to have the hostages back. That's why they have demonstration. But unfortunately, the last polls that were directed and statistics that were directed by Israeli official bodies have shown that over 98% of Israelis are okay with the amount of arms dealt with the Palestinian. They don't see that there is excessive use of firepower. And this is a dangerous thing, because this is the whole of Israel. If we are talking about over 98%, that means that we are talking about the whole population who is okay about killing this amount of Israelis. The only thing that is deterring them from continuing this bombing is that we have hostages there. And if we get the hostages out of the Rafah, there will be no reasons for Israel not to, from the Israeli point of view, of course, not to continue with its war crime and continuing the genocide on the Palestinian people. The only thing that is stopping them is what might happen to the hostages. This is the only problem. But unfortunately, the Israeli people, much like their government, think that the Israeli IDF, which is the Israeli Defense or the army, is not excessively using their arms, even though they killed 33,000, but they believe that This is on the hands of Hamas, and this is the record that they've been using all the time. Whenever we are talking about this excessive amount of people who lost their life, it's because of Hamas, and it's never because of the IDF. And this is a serious problem, because we are not having the people who are demonstrating that they are against their government simply because they are killing Palestinians. No, it's just because your tactics are killing our hostages. When you get them, do whatever you want with the Palestinians. That's, between brackets, what they want. And this is a tragedy, because we have a population, and this is according to Israeli sources, I'm not the one inventing those statistics, who is not in favor of peace. And that's why we are in a serious dilemma. Because even if Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu, the extreme right government, is going to be ousted from his office, there will be another Israeli prime minister who is going to execute the same policies, exactly like the same policies that were implemented by Mr. Netanyahu.
With the same mindset and the same direction.
Exactly, and the same direction and the same narrative that they have, that the Palestinians are responsible for what's happening to them. And unfortunately, because of the American, and here I can say American accomplice with Israel, then this will continue, unfortunately, until we see a stand by the Americans. They are the only one who can deter Israel from continuing with its violation to the international law and the international humanitarian law.
So while the European Union, for example, the European Union Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said that the European Union or the European Commission and Egypt, they have a lot of things to be coordinating and cooperating upon when it comes to be having challenges in the Middle East and in the region nowadays. How do you think the coordination between Egypt and the European Union would be fruitful in terms of having a truce and having a cease in terms of stopping the bloodshed in the Israeli aggression or the genocide war in the Gaza Strip?
Well, the European came to Egypt recently, and I think we've all followed the visit of the European and how they came. They came with big names and several head of states and everything. But this, I think, was related more to the position of Egypt, of course, in Gaza and elsewhere. Egypt is always been enjoying a pivotal role in the region, whether we are talking about Africa, whether the Middle East. Egypt have always been the center, and that's why they visit. Of course, they hope that Egypt will help them to, and actually, and you can get it from the declarations and the statements made by most European countries, which is hold of Hamas, if not the destruction of Hamas, and the second is the release of hostages. This is what they care about. And it is not about that they, of course, they spoke in favor of a Palestinian state, but then what? Nothing. Unfortunately, and that's why I always said that the idea of just listening to the words and the statements of the Western leaders are very encouraging, but deep down you have to see their actions. Their actions are totally opposite to that. They still support Israel. They still, in a way, try to find a way to cover it diplomatically. I mean, when we look at the actions that are being committed by Israel, and when Israel have killed, as I said at the beginning, over 150 of the UNRWA workers, what happened from the Western community in general? Actually, nothing much. And you know why? Because you can see the difference what they can do when the 7 workers of the World Kitchen International, they were killed. And what happened? They were enraged because they are British, they are European nationalities. And that's when they moved. But over 150 workers who are originally Palestinian, who are working, and they are supposed to be working with an international organization, this did not provoke any condemnation to Israel. Actually, we haven't seen any condemnation so far from the administrations to any of the Israeli actions. Condemnation, no. Concerns, sometimes. Or we are asking the Israeli to pay more attention to civilians, or this or that. While if you see the same statement for the same action against the Russian, for instance, you will see something much more severe, where the word condemnation is used clearly. We condemn the Russian using food as a weapon. We condemn. But did they condemn Israel for using food as a weapon? for killing people who are killing over 100 persons who are just trying to get something to feed their families. And do you see any condemnation? No, we are concerned about this. We want to see what really happened, why this really took place. Condemnation is very, very slow, if it comes at all. But when it is in the Russian situation and with Ukraine, then the condemnation is the same moment, almost simultaneously. And that's, once again, we see that's the European, as you mentioned, and the Western countries, what they really do. It's their action that count, not what they say.
Yes, Ambassador Medhat and Miligy, allow me to be going to the other report of the daily debate for tonight, which focuses on the Egyptian regret over the failure of the United Nations Security Council to be recognizing a full Palestinian membership at the United Nations over the past week. We will be having more details regarding such a meeting and such a in the upcoming reports, so stay tuned.
Cairo expressed deep regret following the inability of the UN Security Council due to a US veto to issue a resolution enabling the State of Palestine to be admitted to full membership of the UN. In a statement, the Egyptian Ministry of Foreign Affairs said that the UN Security Council's failure comes at a critical time for the Palestinian cause, which requires the states to assume their historical responsibility by taking a position in support of Palestinian rights. Cairo further affirmed that recognizing the Palestinian state and admitting it to full membership of the UN is an inherent right of the Palestinian people, who have endured the Israeli occupation for more than 70 years. The ministry stated that this recognition is an important step towards implementing the two-state solution and preserving the rights of Palestinians. Obstructing Palestine's recognition contradicts the legal and historical responsibility placed on the international community for putting an end to the occupation and reaching a just solution to the Palestinian cause, the ministry added. In this regard, Cairo called on countries to recognize Palestine and work towards creating an independent Palestinian state on 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital, existing side by side with the Israelis in peace. Late Thursday, the U.S. spoiled a long-shot Palestinian bid for full UN membership, vetoing a Security Council measure despite growing international distress over the humanitarian crisis in the Gaza Strip. The move by the Israelis' key ally had been expected ahead of the vote, taking place more than 6 months into the Israelis' brutal war on the besieged Palestinian territory.
Welcome back. You're still watching the Daily Debate, and I am honored to be having with me over the program for tonight Ambassador Medhat al-Miligy, the former Assistant Foreign Minister and Egypt's former Consul to Israel. Thank you very much for being with us once again over the Daily Debate. We have spoken about the possibility of the liquidation of the Palestinian cause, which is the main aim of Israel over the past decades and more evidently over the past 6 months, to be specific. On the other hand, how did you see the response of the Palestinian people, the response of the Egyptian political leadership and the whole Middle East?
Well, actually, our positions did not change, whether we are talking about the Palestinians or we are talking about Egypt, of course, or even the Arab countries and the rest of the peace-loving countries. But the situation is still where it was, because there is this unconditional support to Israel, and we are talking about countries who are able to finance this war. Israel is able to lead its war because it has financement that is actually not stopping. We just, even though that the massacres that Israel is committing and genocide and the war crimes, just 2 days ago, the United States and the Congress and the Senate have approved a deal of $26 billion to Israel, more arms to Israel. Of course, there is another 62 to Ukraine, which actually it shows here to which sides they are giving this money away. So, I mean, there is no kind of any punishment or any holding back to the support. And this is why Israel is continuing what it's doing, simply because it knows that it can count on the United States and its unconditional support. But my problem here is that we reach a certain moment that I can consider the moment of truth. The idea is that we have to understand that this will not be an easy game, and it will not be an easy battle at all. And we have to understand, and we have to start taking our own narratives. And our own narratives can be out of the box. I'm happy that I do not represent the Egyptian state as I used to be, since I'm retired now.
More freedom.
Exactly.
Yes.
And this allows me to say that I wonder sometimes if we are really serious about this, keep repeating one after the other about the two-state solution. Is there a two-state solution? Is there a possibility of having a two-state solution? Unfortunately, what we are seeing so far shows that there is no hope for the second state. Israel, the United States, on the contrary, although it preaches a second state, the two-state solution, but of course we've seen at the United States Security Council what happened 2 days ago when they vetoed. We just saw it on the report right now that the United States insists that Palestinians should not have a state unless the Israeli accept. And this is why they said that the only possible way for a Palestinian state is through the Israelis, is with direct negotiations with the Israeli, and that's why they vetoed. And this is according to the permanent mission of the United States to the United Nations. So the United States will never force Israel to something it doesn't want. So do we really have a hope for a two-state solution, since Israel is not in favor of a Palestinian state, of the reasons why?
So what is the alternative?
Well, according to me and many other observers, I think the only solution lies in a one-state solution. This is, if you want to call it a sign, or this is the practical state that can be viable, because actually the two-state solution, having Gaza on one side and having the West Bank on the other side, with no possible connection. Even if a Palestinian, a woman from Gaza, he cannot bring her to the West Bank. So, I mean, and there are so many other difficult rules implemented in the West Bank and Gaza to separate the two. That's why Israel, sometimes we hear some people talking about a three-state solution, which is Gaza on one hand and West Bank on the other hand, and Israel as a third state. But what I think is that we have to have the one-state solution, where in a democratic state where everyone has equal rights, Arabs and Jews along. But Israel do not want this, and this is the thing that scares Israel the most, simply because it wants a Jewish state and not a democratic state, not a secular state. They want a state that is only made for the and actually, if they have the power and if they have the possibility, they even want to kick outside the Palestinians who are what we call the Palestinians of 1948. If they get the chance, they wouldn't mind doing that at all. But the idea is that this is the only state that's going to be viable. We can continue preaching about the two-state solution, and we continue hoping that one day we can have a two-state solution. But and here I'm quoting Gedon Levy, who is the one of a famous Israeli newspaper editor-chief, said that if Israel ever wanted a two-state solution, they wouldn't have built this huge amount of settlements to dismantle them one day to give them to the Palestinians. Israel never had an intention for a two-state solution, and that's why they keep taking and they keep swallowing more of the lands, more of the water resources, and one time they might be just saying, here's our borders, and they did that in a certain way with the wall they built. Maybe they will build another wall and a third wall just to continue taking more of the Palestinian land and then leaving a small enclave, and this is what we are planning to leave to the Palestinian if you want to have the state. So if we continue about asking for a two-state solution that is going to be based on Israeli wishes, then we will never have an independent Palestinian state on the borders of the 4th of June 1967. It cannot happen with this Israeli mindset, as you mentioned it a few minutes. The idea is that we have to work on something, as we say, out of the box. The two-state solution does not seem that it's an idea that can take off. So we have to think about another idea. I am suggesting the one-state solution. Maybe others will come with another idea. But the most important thing, that the Palestinian cause should not be liquidated by exporting the Palestinians to other countries. And mainly, whether we are talking about Egypt on one side for Gaza and Jordan on the other side for the West Bank. This is not the solution. We cannot just deroot the Palestinians from their own land just to ask them to live in a new country or a new place that is not theirs, and they will not be treated as they should, because at the end they are going to be guests in these countries. The real thing, this is the real deal. The idea of Israel, well, if you like the Palestinians so much, then take them, this is not fair. Or we can say this during the whole history of humanity. Whenever a country is conquering others, then the others should leave. And then if you don't want to help to the solution, then keep them inside for humiliation and so on. And this is what Israel is doing. And I think that we have to start thinking different ways, because we have an occupation force that is relentless from calming down, and a country that is one of the biggest country in the history of humanity, which is the United States, supporting it and enabling it to continue so.
Yes, and speaking about the occupation forces, and they are not calming down, how do you think, or who is benefiting from the endless round of negotiations, the rounds of truce talks and ceasefire talks that have happened over the past few months ever since the October 7th aggression by Israel against the Gaza Strip? Who is benefiting from elongating such a round of talks? Of course, with the mediation of Egypt, Qatar, the United States and France.
Well, with the mediation of the whole world. I think that, if you may permit me, I think that only Israel is benefiting from this. I mean, the West in general have drowned us in so many resolutions. They drowned us in so many decisions and initiatives and ideas and concepts and things, while Israel is taking more and more lands. This is a fact. This is what happened so far. This is why that the Palestinian land is historically reduced to less than 20% of its original size. And since we are not doing anything to explore new horizons and new solutions, so these are only initiatives that haven't seen the light so far. When was Oslo? It was over 30 years ago. What happened? What is the outcome of Oslo so far? Nothing. Nothing. Israel continues to occupy these countries. And please, I mean, because we hear a lot of Westerners speaking about that Israel was not in Gaza. Well, actually, it controlled its borders, whether land or air or sea. And even the fishermen, the Palestinian fishermen, couldn't go out to fish because the Israeli would block them from going to the open sea to fish. So they are controlling everything. And then they say that you are free to do. This is, as they describe it, the biggest open door or open air prison in the world. It is a prison. The Israelis are controlling every movement of the Palestinians, whether we are talking about Gaza or the West Bank. So back to your question, Israel is the only one benefiting, because on the land, Israel is taking more and more land. It's devouring more and more land of Palestine and leaving the Palestinian homeless or evicted to other areas inside the West Bank and so on. Where are the people of Jerusalem now? They are kicked out. Any citizen of Jerusalem, if he leaves Jerusalem for, I think, a period of 3 months or 6 months, he cannot come back. He's evicted automatically. And this is what they are doing. They are changing the situation in Jerusalem demographically, because they want to convince the world that this is only a Jewish place, and this is only an enclave for Jews, and Arabs do not have a place there, and so on. So this is the situation as it is, and this is the answer to your question. Unfortunately, we are trying, and we have to continue trying. I just said this about our permanent representative to the United Nations, Mr. Dr. Osama Abdul Khaled, that we have to continue trying, because actually with small steps maybe we can reach something, but on the short term I don't see it happening.
Yes, Ambassador Medhat Miligy, the former Assistant Foreign Minister and the Aegis former Consul to Israel, thank you very much once again for being with us tonight on the Daily Debate. Anytime. And this brings us to the end of the Daily Debate for tonight. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.